So at that point, and we always went by group meetings. We would have group meetings once every 2 weeks, something like that, and everybody would say what had happened, and then we'd decide what we were going to do next. And it was a team group consensus, and I used to frequently take votes. If there was dissension, we would vote. Now, I retained a veto power, but I pretty much went along with it. So we had to, the aluminophosphate work was, the patent was filed. We did not anticipate much of a problem in getting it issued. And then when the world knew about it, we figured that they would think the same way we were thinking and start adding elements. So we needed a very quick way to screen a lot of elements. So we had found out in the SAPL system, the silicon phosphate system, that the addition of the silicon element in the framework controlled structure. And there were 3 particular templates when you went to the SAPO composition versus the ALPO that formed a new structure in the SAPO system and didn't form that structure in the ALPO system. So our strategy for screening elements was to use just these 3 templates. And our guideline was, if we formed a new structure, didn't have to be pure, but at least some of a new structure, that meant that we had the element incorporated. And if we got no effect, we went on. And it was that kind of a screening strategy that we actually discovered up to the 13 elements that are now part of the ALPO, so-called ALPO-based molecular sieve generation. And following the silicon, the next materials that we looked at, and this was primarily Steve Wilson's work, were the divalent elements. We call them the MIAPO part of the family. And these are magnesium, zinc, manganese, cobalt, iron. And Steve had immediate success starting with magnesium, and he pursued that family. At the same time, Brent Locke was working on titanium and did the titanium work, and subsequently Brent and Celeste Messina, working with him, did a lot of the iron work. And we tried some elements that didn't work. But it was a very, very prolific time. It was very, very exciting, and my office was on, we had moved in 1969. The Lindy Research Department had moved from Tonawanda, New York to Tarrytown, New York, and the work I'm talking about now was done in the Lindy Research Department at Tarrytown, New York. In the research building at Tarrytown, that's called the Lindy Building, there was a floor 1 of laboratories and laboratory worker offices. Then there was a mezzanine for the office people that didn't do lab work, and then a second floor of laboratory and worker offices. And my group was on the second floor, and my office was on the mezzanine, as were all of the research directors and so forth, supervisors. And when they got an X-ray that showed they had made a new material, they would typically come running down to my office with their lab coats on, and everybody would come out of the mezzanine office and say, "You discovered another one." So it was really a terribly exciting time. I have often told my coworkers in the area that they should consider a unique opportunity in history to have been involved in the project, because I don't think there are very many projects in history that work that way.
How could you, back that far in grade school, get to be a baseball pitcher? You were way ahead of your time.
That was my father. My father, in his late teens and early 20s, was a AAA league professional baseball player, and he was a catcher. And I was a bit of a tomboy, and I was very interested in baseball, and he taught me all that I knew: how to bat, how to pitch, how to field, how to catch. And of course, women did not, this was hardball, not softball now. Even then, there were some women playing softball, but it wasn't very popular at all. But teams in schools were, of course, all boys. And when we moved from North Tonawanda, New York to Buffalo, and I went to St. Mark's Parochial School, and I think I was about the 4th grade when I moved. They had a boys' team, and my father at some time bragged to the coach that they ought to have me coaching their pitcher because their pitcher was no good. So he was very startled, but he said, well, let's see her. So he couldn't believe the way I pitched. I was very good. And he decided to test the waters, and in just a couple of games, he put me in, and it caused an unbelievable storm.
Did it make the newspapers?
No, it didn't make the newspapers, but I very quickly retired to just practicing with the team. And then in high school, I was an avid basketball